What's up, everyone? I'm Melissa Elise, and you're watching Melissa Elise TV. Welcome to my August book club review. In this video, we'll be taking a look at Book 8, the final current published Outlander novel by Diana Gabaldon, written in my own heart's blood, and of course, revealing the next book of the month. I'm gonna try to track with the storyline of the book for this review, so let's get to it. As usual, there will likely be spoilers in this video, so proceed at your own discretion. So something An Echo in the Bone did was introduce several different character perspectives, and this book continued that, starting with Ian's, which I thought was very interesting because with all that he goes through at the end of Echo, I totally forgot that he would still think his uncle and his mother were dead. So the book opens with Ian building these cairns for them, which was really sad and beautiful, something Diana does very well. But then later on, Ian is of course reunited with his uncle Jamie and with his mother Jenny. I was going to try to stay on track with the storyline, but who am I kidding? Let's just talk about Ian real quick. His journey throughout the book does meet with at least one near-death experience, but thankfully he survives to then go on and marry Rachel, and by the end of the book becomes a father. Sadly, he does suffer one great loss, and that's Rollo, who waited until Ian and Rachel got married to pass away. There's a few other sad parts to this book that I'll talk about later, but overall, I really did enjoy this book. And with it being the longest of the series, there is so much that I could cover, but there's really only three main plot lines that stood out to me. First is John's journey. At the end of Echo, John is kidnapped by Jamie so that Jamie can get out of Philadelphia alive. But then once they're in the clear, John tells him that he slept with Claire. And at first, Jamie's just kind of confused as to why that would happen considering John's sexual preference. But then John elaborates and provokes Jamie to beat him up. And I don't really think that Jamie would have killed him. He might have beaten him within an inch of his life, which he almost does, but they get interrupted by some rebel soldiers who don't know who Jamie is. But Jamie just walks off and leaves Gray in their custody. From there, John spends at least half the book either as a prisoner of war or under rebel disguise until he finally surrenders to Jamie, but Jamie ends up releasing him essentially so that he can escape, which he does, but then gets captured again by his own side, who don't believe he is who he says he is. But luckily for him, Ian, who got captured too, vouches for him, and they're both okay in the end. Though even once John is reunited with his brother Hal, the Duke of Pardlow, and William, who is a whole nother story, John's troubles aren't over. Partly because the war isn't over, but then also because he and Hal set off to find Hal's oldest son, Ben, who's been captured as a POW and reported dead. They also have to find Ben's wife and child, who they only just learned existed. I think of John and Hal as connected, of course, because they are brothers, but I really enjoyed meeting Hal in Echo, and I loved his involvement in this story. He's a really interesting character on his own, but he also provides more insight into who John is and the whole Gray family. It's worth mentioning that William is in a precarious situation in this story. With the revelation of his real father and who that makes him, his journey throughout the book mirrors that. As he struggles to figure out what the truth means for him, where he belongs, and how it affects everything he thought he knew, he also can't be really a soldier anymore since surrendering at Saratoga, so he can't even do what he's there to do. He just is wandering emotionally, mentally, and physically. He's all over the place throughout the story, but he starts to find some direction as he finally confronts not only his situation as a soldier and he resigns his commission, but then he confronts the truth and Jamie. The second plot point that stands out to me is when Claire gets shot during the Battle of Monmouth. And in pure Diana fashion, Jamie is right there to see it happen. And it's a good thing he was too, because otherwise Claire might have bled out, because it doesn't seem like anyone else was around or even cared to help that much. Eventually they do find Dr. Denzel Hunter, Rachel's brother, and he performs surgery, gets the bullet out, and Claire recovers. But when it happened, Jamie resigned his general's commission in the Continental Army. Then once Claire recovers, he purposes to take her and the rest of his family back to the Ridge, but not before there's a devastating fire at Fergus and Marcelly's print shop, and poor little Henri Christian dies trying to escape with his brother Germain. Thankfully, Germain survives, but blames himself for letting Henri Christian go. As sad as that part is, on the opposite end, and something else that's worth mentioning, is that there's a lot of babies born in this book. First there's Ben Gray's son, and then Dottie and Denzel have a child. Fergus and Marcely have another kid after Henri Christian's funeral towards the end of the book, and then Ian and Rachel have a son. So many babies. The third and final thing that really stood out to me about this book was Brianna and Roger's storyline, and jumping back and forth between the past, the future, and a whole nother past that I certainly did not see coming. Going back to Bri and Roger's storyline and picking up from the end of Echo, where Rob Cameron has kidnapped Jem and Roger and Buck go through the stones to try to get him back, they don't find any sign of Jem, but what they do find is Jeremiah Mackenzie's dog tags from the Royal Air Force in the year 1739. This whole chain of events could have dragged on for a long time, so I'm really glad that it didn't, but I'm also glad that Roger did get to meet and save his father. Though it was pretty creepy that Buck meets his mom, Galis Duncan, and makes out with her, and he knew it was his mother. They also meet another time traveler who has this ability to heal people, but when he does it, his hands and the affected part of the person's body turns blue. And it's not clear that he even understands why. More unanswered questions. Meanwhile, Brianna fights off Cameron, who is not alone in his endeavor. He and like 3 or 4 other people are in on this scheme to get the French gold, or it might be more than that, because Brianna finds this letter from Frank talking about how people might be after her because she's the possible heir to the Fraser prophecy. Either way, Brianna and the kids, with some help from Fiona and her husband and even Jem's school teacher, escape to Boston, where they get help from Uncle Joe and his wife, and they do actually find out what time period Roger is in because he leaves Brianna a letter that's found inside the desk back at Lollybrook. They do return to Scotland and go through the stones at Craignadoon, and their story ends on a happy note with reuniting with Roger. And the book as a whole ends on a very happy note with Bri and Roger and Jem and Mandy returning to the Ridge. I like this ending, I really do. Of course, there's more of the story to tell, and I desperately want to know what's going to happen with William, but that's what book 9 is for. So I really could not have thought of a better way to end this book. And I'm sending Diana all positive thoughts for book 9. Book 9. I do have a question for you guys this month, and that is, do you think Jenny will remember meeting Roger? And are there consequences for meeting someone at 2 different points in their lifetime? Roger does meet her at Lollybrook in 1739. Does that change anything? Let me know what you think in the comment section. And of course, let me know what you thought of this book. Before I go, I have to reveal the next book club pick, and that is Less by Andrew Shawn Grier. This book is about a failed novelist that goes on this kind of crazy journey, but it's also supposed to be a comedy and a love story, and I'm pretty excited to read it. I am going to start steering away from series in our book club picks, but if you guys have any suggestions for books that you want me to read and review, definitely let me know. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next month. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you're new here, consider subscribing for more book reviews.